Welcome to another episode of Dealmakers Chronicles with the Hasanov Brothers. I am Farouk and I have my partner and my co-host Farhad with me. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Yiannos. He has a fascinating story. Came from Greece, now runs and owns a major design firm in New York. Welcome, Yiannos. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, first things first, please tell us a little bit about yourself. We want to know.
Okay, so I came from Greece. I'm from Thessaloniki. It's the northern part of Greece. Not all Greece is only islands, just to make sure. My family is in the retail import distribution of high-end luxury brands in clothing. So that's kind of my intro to design. My father made sure to expose me to traveling, design, fashion, brands, and the importance of business and aesthetics, which is, it was a great lesson for me to see how valuable aesthetics and design is actually to the overall business, something that is often overlooked. However, we're like surrounded by design, right? Like everything we do and our emotional responses are based on the environment that we live and we are. And
So, at what point did you say to yourself, okay, I'm working with my parents. I want something more. I want something different. Like, how long ago was that? What led you to that thought process?
so I like I said, I was exposed to design since at a very young age, and through like our like my family's like retail business and everything else, I realized I was really drawn to design. And once this bug got to me and I started identifying, right, I I also have a degree in marketing. I was studying marketing at the time because I thought this is a good balance between creativity and business. But I realized I was really drawn to full on design. I said, you know what, if I believe I'm good at this and I can make it, I should go in the most competitive market in the world and make it there. And then I applied to a few like schools. I got accepted to all of them, thankfully, and I picked the one, and here I am.
Yeah, that's an incredible journey, from a small town, having the courage to move, first of all, to a different country, different language, and entering an industry, like you mentioned, is one of the most competitive industries in the most competitive city in the world. Tell us more about the actual journey of moving to a brand new country, going into a field that is new to you. Yes, you had exposure to design and fashion, but this is something that's going to be brand new to you, and you were in a new city in a new language with no friends. And how are you able to make that journey to where you are now, where almost every developer in New York knows your name?
Well, I came here, being in college helped a lot to develop a circle like quite fast. And obviously through like my family's business, I got to meet like other people within the fashion world. From that, on the third year of college, I met my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, and we realized, we were working together well. Being an entrepreneur, coming from an entrepreneurial family, to me, the concept of working somewhere else, it just didn't even occur. It wasn't like part of my path at all. So we won a competition. We did an installation for a charity. And then on graduation, I was like, you know what? We should actually start a company. The idea, we started like in 2010. We conceptualized like input in 2009. And the thought process was, okay, we're coming from 2008. The market is hurting. The companies that we are looking up to are not as nimble as we can be. And the market is forgiving, right? So let's enter the market now. We can be competitive. We can make mistakes because people are willing to accept mistakes for, whether it was like better pricing or having like hungrier, like, younger design firm to take on their projects. Also, the scale of the projects was much smaller. And, fast forward to now, we actually have like a real firm.
So this one thing that you mentioned that's very interesting is a lot of people tell us, me and Farouk, is like, oh, you guys are family, brothers. It's very hard to make that work, right? That's usually the exception to the rule. You and your wife are also an exception to the rule, right? They say do not work with your spouses. However, you've had a successful company now, what's going on 15 years. Can you tell us more about that dynamic, working with your wife, having started from nothing, and still having an amazing relationship at home and having beautiful kids?
Well, the thing is that we kind of like developed our relationship by working together. So like we're dating, we're working together in the school like projects, then moving on like we start. So in a way, our relationship was always like work was part of our relationship. And we learned how to like separate the personal to professional. And because of that, I think that's how we maintain balance. I heard a really great quote from Jeff Bezos, right? Like, it's not about work-life balance, it's about work-life, what's the word actually? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's okay.
It's not balance, but it's about coexistence, right? It's about like one informs the other, and I think that is actually an excellent approach to this. Like, balancing means that none of the two you figured it out and you're trying to balance it. Where if you learn how to blend them together, and one informs the other, right? Like, if you're happy at work, you're happy at home. If you're unhappy at work, you're unhappy, and vice versa. Because of that, I think like our relationship is more symbiotic than expected.
And do you do the same tasks as your wife within the company? So does she help you with design, or do you spearhead the design aspect? She helps you more with the administrative stuff. Did you find, and you're smiling, so I know there's a lot to it.
So yes, so excellent question. So when we started, obviously we were like the two of us, and our dog at the time. So the tasks were pretty, evenly split. As we start growing and different aspects of our business were growing, she was like the human face of input to some extent, and I believe as we go on and on in this conversation, this will make more sense. She humanized me, right? She maintained relationships with our office employee and our team, and she was like way more engaged in that aspect, where I was like doing the more client facing part of the business. Nowadays, I think obviously we have kids, and she has taken more the admin roles and then things and I learned how to be a little bit more humane.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a constant evolving.
Very interesting. So one thing I wonder, so you and your wife, you have this dream. You say, we don't want to work for anybody. And it's a conversation I have with a lot of people who always ask me, should I get into entrepreneurship? Should I work for somebody? And for me, I always felt like entrepreneurship is a path. It's not, it's almost like a calling. It's either you have it or you don't. And I was always wondering, how did you decide to get into like opening up your own company? Why not work for a big cushy firm? It makes sense for you. You're so accustomed to working for yourself, for your family business. You're very entrepreneurial. You did that, but it is a big leap, right? You start a company. I'm sure you guys had a phenomenal website when you started, and now you get a license. You incorporate. You get your EIN. Now what? How do you get your first client? Who was your first client? Did you at some point set everything up, look at each other and say, hey, how do we have this business? Or did you already have an idea of where your business is going to be coming from when you open the company?
Wow, fantastic question. Well, we did have a vision, right? And the vision was we want to do like commercial design, not any private residential. We knew that was like the path. People thought obviously like we're crazy. It's like it's New York, it's competitive. How you can even penetrate this market? It didn't matter. Like I said, it was 2010. We had a vision, we had a plan. Now everything starts with like a dream and a plan. Doesn't mean that the path is always the same. I was fortunate enough, a friend of mine in Greece introduced me to someone. They were opening their Eastern European headquarters in Greece for a big lighting company from China. It was a 70,000 square feet like project. And that was our kickstarting project, right? Like they brought it to us. We're like, sure, we can definitely deliver this one. And we did. It It was great. Then, through word of mouth, some random connections, we end up taking a few residential projects just because, you're starting a business. You need to take anything that you can to start creating, a portfolio. At the same time, we were highly involved in charity. It's ingrained in our DNA for business. I believe like giving back. It doesn't matter where or what. It's something that every human being should be doing.
Hmm.
I think it's our responsibility.
Absolutely.
And that led us to keep us busy on doing like installations and cool things. And one thing like for people they don't understand about design is when you're starting, you have an opportunity to do like cool things because you can work with zero budget, just meeting like cool people, doing like cool things, which leads to like a lot of like being published. A lot of like publications came to us. We've been published to almost every publication, same publication, and not. And from that, it led us to landing a giant client, Lenovo, through a competition. We were like totally the underdog, and we ended up winning this competition, and that kind of formed us as a real firm, right? Because we had to deal with contracts and different like things that we had no idea. One thing starting a firm by yourself is like nobody gives you a guidebook of this is
Right.
and it's both like a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that you can create your own standards as you go and improve them. And the curse is that you have no idea what you're getting into. And from that we one thing led to another. We had like a few other clients, and then suddenly through again circumstances, we got into the development market around 2000 and I would say like 15 or 14 probably. Yeah, 14.
So in interior design, I feel like there's two different ways of doing it. I would say 4 out of every five interior designers I meet say they're interior designers, but they specialize in picking the right color for your walls, saying, hey, put this couch here. You should buy these bar stools for your house. And then there's interior designers like yourself who really digs in, who advises the architect on, okay, maybe we should make the outline this way. It's quite different. At what point do you make that decision when you study design? Do you say to yourself, oh, you know what? I want to just rearrange furniture in somebody's house and call myself an interior designer? Or do I want to really dig deep into architectural, the construction process? Is there a difference? Is there a different word, or people are just used to call themselves interior designers?
Yes and no. I think the biggest distinction, the most common terms to separate the two is decorating. Like you have the residential decorators and then you have interior designers. Now, to go more in depth to that, it's, I believe like someone with a full like 4 or 5 year degree in interior design should be called an interior designer. Someone that picked a hobby or has like a very limited education on the design aspect can stay within the decorating environment. And then between the different types of interior design, as I mentioned before, there is the commercial and the residential aspect. Different expertise, different needs. The commercial world deals with obviously way more liability, much higher budgets, and more responsibilities that come with that. So to make it like short, I think that the distinction is when you're looking at who is the design firm that you want to undertake your project, is are they doing like commercial design? Are they doing residential? And what is their qualifications?
So, for example, we've worked on a few projects together, both ground up, redevelopment, and we've seen the impact that you and your firm, Input Creative, have provided us, being able to get higher sellouts, being able to get higher rents. However, having said that, a lot of developers still see hiring a designer as an extra cost. How are you able to show a new developer that you're trying to pitch, trying to show the value of your services? Because we can say firsthand how valuable you are, and listening to your recommendations to a point where certain things that an architect brings up, you change it to a point where it's a completely different floor design, it's a completely different facade, and that's what works. How are you able to show that value? How are you able to pitch that to a brand new developer that sees designers as an extra cost and as a luxury?
The same way how you have multiple different like designers, you have different developers. kudos to you guys. You look at your Excel sheet, but also like you try to understand holistically what goes in a project and what the real value add is in a project, right? I think there are different two types of developers, like developers that they stick to an Excel sheet and developers that they want to create a project and the vision. And I think the developers with the vision and that they're shifting away from the Excel sheet are the ones that they create, legacy projects. And that doesn't mean that these are expensive projects, or it just means that you care. You care a bit more. You understand that the buildings that we put out will stay long after we're gone. And we have an impact in communities. We have an impact in the market and neighborhoods. And, you can either be the driving force or you can be like the follower. It depends on where you want to be when you're developing. So now we get approached on a lot of different like developers. Thankfully, we're in a position we can pick and choose our projects. We try to explain through our portfolio, through like similar like precedent studies, like projects that we've done in the past, through research, and it's very facts based. Right, we can show, and even the projects that we've done together, you can see, right, like the difference in the visibility, the feedback, the excitement with the sales team or marketing teams, right? And I think that's a very important component. Now we can only speak on in terms of like value, what we can add to the project, and we can bring like examples. Ultimately, it comes down to who is the person on the other side of the table and what do they see in the grand scheme of projects, right? Like the differences between design firms at like our scale is minimal. So a project that is, for example, like in a project with a budget of like 300 million, right? Like the difference in a design firm in terms of like fee, it's almost like non-existence to move the needle on your decision making. So that only
Exactly.
shows how you look at the project and how you break down your team. I think team is the number one thing on every project, to have like having great architects. It helps you identify great deals. Having great design firms, it helps you actually generate projects that perform well for you and your investors.
So one thing you mentioned, and I caught, is a lot of there's a big misconception in the industry that if you hire a designer, especially one like yourself who really knows what they're doing, your budget is going to explode in terms of the materials, the finishes, etc. However, you're very different when it comes to that. You are able to combine creativity and practicality. How are you able to balance the two, right? You as a designer, as an artist, as a visionary, you would want to make the most gorgeous property, apartments, buildings possible, but you're able to pair that with practicality to a point where A, the developer is able to source these materials in a very financially sound way, and B, that the materials and the finishes that you do provide for the projects and the way they look increases the value of the project. So how do you balance the creativity versus the practicality of your designs?
We like to consider ourselves your design partner more than anything else, which allows us to listen and be there with you when you're developing your concept and trying to position your project, right? And that's why we try to advise people to bring us in as early as possible in the project, and that's when we can bring the most amount of value. We listen, we do a lot of research on where is the project, what's our baselines, what's our competition, and where do we want to be. Once we collect this data, and this is through conversations with the developer, marketing, sales, as well as our own personal research and data, then we start creating a plan of like a path on how do we hit every milestone. And always there is like, the target, right? Like we want to achieve whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. Then once we develop the overall vision, we start doing like internal value engineering in the project, and we see what are the things that matter and what are the things that it can be like flexible. And the things that they can be flexible, we are there with you to, as long as the channel of communication is open, we are there to support you and also introduce you to our vast network of people that we have surrounded ourselves that can provide you with great products at very well priced, but quality is equally important to us. And then there are the things that they have significant impact in the overall vision for the project. And these are the products that we are not flexible about. So, and you guys know from firsthand that there were items that we're very open to discuss, and then there are items that it's just we're not changing them because, again, we try to keep you in line for the target. And I know that there is the spreadsheet that you're constantly looking at, but sometimes it's how about let's step back and see the overall picture. And the question is always, can we afford that? It's not about this is over budget. The question is can we afford that? And what's the impact? What is the pros and cons? What are we trying to do? And I think collectively, this is why we are able to achieve extraordinary projects that make sense both financially, but also hit top numbers.
Yeah, and you work in New York, and you're starting to do bigger and bigger projects. So you have a lot of experience working with a lot of New York developers. And one thing that's constant when speaking with anybody who services them, whether you do mortgages, whether you're brokering deals, whether you're property management company working for them, there's a lot of egos. When you do such large projects at such a large scale, there's a lot of I know better than you. Do you come across often where the developer pushes back on your vision and says, no, Jan, I think this is better? And if you do, how do you handle a situation like that where the developer may be a little bit too committed on the design phase, like it's taking away from your vision?
Yes, egos. We all have egos. To be a designer, you need a little bit of a God complex and a little bit of ego, right? Because we try to convince you to spend a significant amount of money on our vision. So somehow we need to really believe in this vision. And yeah, it is a fight of egos, 100%. Now there is a very fine balance between ego, partnership, or having a working relationship. I use the word partnership before as your design partner, and that means that it needs to be an open dialogue where both parties willing to listen. I think friction is very important, and I think it's good. It's really good to have friction because friction allows you to think. I never start with no, so I'm open for discussions, and we can discuss the craziest thing ever. There are elements where if I professionally believe they're wrong, I would simply say it's wrong, and I think that's where the conversation should end. And we also had projects where, this relationship wasn't as symbiotic, and the moment the project stops being our vision, we remove ourselves from the project completely. If you want to grow a successful business, I think it's 60% is the ability to learn how to say no or step away from unhealthy projects.
And oftentimes that happens before you start the project where you say to yourself, oh, this may not be a good fit. I know a little earlier you mentioned sometimes you have a conversation now with developers, and unlike before, you don't have to take on every single opportunity. So what is it like, having the first conversation with a developer where you say to yourself, okay, this is not a project we want to do. Is it the person that's not easy to work with, or there's too much input he's giving you in what needs to be designed? How do you make that assessment of, okay, we should not be working with this person?
At the beginning of the project, we do always have an intro conversation for every project, everything that we take. This intro conversation it goes both ways. The client interviewing us, and we are interviewing the client. There are a few red flags that can be raised rather quickly, right? Big ego, very set in stone on certain items, unwillingness to listen, or simply lack of experience, which is the number one reason where we won't take a project. Lack of experience leads to false expectations, And false expectations lead to like very unhealthy work environments.
False expectations in your world, is that them just wanting the
it's
best
it's
without wanting to pay for it, or what does false expectations look like?
it's never about budget. Like I think a lot of people like confuse this. It's very rarely is about budget. Anyone or the majority of people that we speak to, like you mentioned, interior design, we are a luxury. So if you're planning to work on any affordable housing projects that require like the least amount of design, I'll be the first one to like tell you you do not need us, right? But anything else that you do above that in mid, high and luxury market, hiring a design firm, it's an absolutely necessity, and that should be reflected in your underwriting. There should be like a very healthy line item there because this line item is what actually can add value or remove value to your project. So for that, budget is very rarely like the conversation. The biggest issue is approach to design, understanding what the team does, taking the time to understand what each component of the project is, and also is understanding your time frames. Everyone is in a rush and everyone wants like things to happen. There is a process, and as long as people are logical and willing to learn, not everyone starts experienced. But I think even the youngest designers, the youngest developers that we've encountered, the big separator is people willing to listen, learn, and understand, and have an open dialogue. So whoever cannot do that, it's not a good fit for us.
One thing that you mentioned is, you have that kickoff meeting, right? When you're meeting for the first time, you're bouncing ideas each other for what the project is. And like you mentioned, there's red flags that can be raised from both your side and the developer side. But we both know a lot of times, most oftentimes, you don't know the person or how the dynamic is going to be until you jump into the boat and you take on that journey. Have you ever had a situation where a project is going, but it's going so completely different than was promised? Your vision's been destroyed in so many different ways, from whether it's finishes, substitutes, complete change of the design, where you say, you know what, my company is established and has a reputation. I don't want my company's name to be associated with this project, and you left mid-project. And if that did happen, what was the final straw for you in that situation?
Excellent, great question. And yes, it did happen. It's very rare, like in all of our years of existence, I think like we can count the times this happened like in one hand. It's not about the final straw. I think we need the project to look 97% of what was designed to be. That is our rule. And it's baked in our contract and our proposals, so we can be protected. The way our business works is always we need to be able to leverage our project for the next project. Successful projects bring us business, unsuccessful projects, we lose business. And that has happened in a few times. And once we see that the communication starts becoming like less and less, and the team starts making decisions on their taking like a lot of like creative freedom. That is like when we instantly try to like cut any ties with the project, because there is absolutely no reason for that. We are very responsive, as you know from firsthand, and we provide a very accurate like set of drawings as well as support to the project, that there is no reason at any point for this communication to be broken. And the only times this communication is broken is whether like the people decide to perform like, really bad construction methods, which is a whole other thing, or there is external pressure. I don't know. There is like so many different components into it, but the moment the communication becomes broken, it's time for us to let the project and remove any liability or our name from that.
And
Yeah,
with this, go ahead, Fran.
yeah. You just continue with that thought. That one thing you mentioned is, you working with the GCs hand in hand, and how important that relationship between you and the GC. We were very surprised on our first project when you sent us the complete CD with every single little part in that building. outline where it's coming from, how it needs to be installed. So, I mean, hundreds of pages, right? Can you elaborate on that relationship that you have with the GCs? Because you've been able on all of our projects, and I assume, and on projects with other developers, be on that job site at 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning, going through the projects, and I would get a phone call or a text message from you. Things are going wrong, right? And that's strong, and we'll be thankful for that opinion. Can you talk to us about your relationship with GCs, the importance of that in terms of being able to achieve the vision that the developer sees and purchase from you to deliver on?
Yeah, I'm the first one to say that I consider GCs some of our biggest allies. Right, I never start by considering any GC as an enemy or like beginning with friction. A lot of designers, even it's baked in the education, like the GC nightmares, the construction nightmares. If you have the proper setup and you care about your project, the emergencies should not happen or should be like very limited. I can say confidently that we fulfill our promise to the developer and the GC that will provide them with all the right information at the right time frame that they need to execute the project up to our standards. So coming from that point of view that we try to fulfill our promise, we expect this to be reciprocated. Different GCs, different capabilities, different structures. We try to work as much as possible with anyone that is aligned, but like I said, it's still our name and my I think one of my biggest assets and the biggest flaws is that I care. I care for every project and I care about every screw that goes to the project. And this can be seen in different ways, right? Like someone might say, why do you care? Just let it go. We are just like delivering the project. Why do you care? I care because I made the promise to you the moment we signed the contract that I will deliver you what we discussed, and I do not break my promises. So I do care. Now, because of that, I get very frustrated sometimes when there is lack of sensitivity to the final execution. And and that to me is like the construction side breaks their promise to the developer because we both know that in order for you to engage an GC, they need to price your project based on a set of drawings, or at least that's the real process or the normal process. So anyone that receives the set of drawings and they cannot deliver it, that means either they promised you like something else, or they did not look at our drawings, and we will hold them accountable for this.
Yeah, this is one of the added benefits that before we started working with you, and I don't think this is across all designers, by the way. I think this is very unique to you, and I think it's a tremendous help to the developer. It's almost a extra set of eyes to make sure that the project gets delivered on time and gets delivered the way that it was promised. Farouk, you want to ask a question that I rudely interrupted you before?
Yeah, no, so we're speaking a lot about projects that you want to take your name off and things didn't go too well. Do you have your favorite projects where I think with designers, just like with architects, like having children, and you almost feel embarrassed to pick one over the other. But do you have your favorites, and your wife isn't here, so you can tell us the truth? Do you have your favorites where you design the project and you say to yourself, wow, this is my top two favorite, my top three favorite? Or do you kind of start blank and you have the same relationship with all the projects?
No, no, I'm not one of these people that I would say that because it's big teams of people involved in the project. So usually the projects that we enjoy the most is when the whole team is symbiotic and very collaborative and you enjoy, you can be creative, you can have a conversation, you can actually you feel the energy. Now, that being said, can I pinpoint like one specific project? I can pinpoint one specific project every month, right? Like because we do work in high volume of projects, and within the pipeline, I can always identify like the project. Like I can see my team being excited, and it stems from the team. It's not the project based; it's team based. That being said, I always want to say that my favorite project is the next one.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It's not the answer I was hoping for. I would think that you would say that the Red Hook project is your all-time favorite, and the one we did together was the best thing that you ever designed, and you don't see yourself upgrading from that. But it's okay. It's
But if
okay.
you
I'll
think
try to edit
about
this
it,
somehow, put AI in here to have you say it, but fine. I'll take your answer.
but if you think about it, right? Like, have you thought that maybe I look forward to our next project together because it can be like bigger and better? I don't know. Unless you guys want to stay stagnant and do the same thing over and over and over again.
I guess maybe what I want to say is I want our projects to be top of line, whichever ones that we do above everybody else. So talking about egos, I'm gonna just drop it in there. And one thing we've noticed, and just kind of just listening to how just seeing your company expand. And I feel like there's more and more developers that you're working with. You're attaching your name to more and more buildings, and you've become very active in a very competitive space. Like, how are you able to achieve so much success so quickly? Is it referrals? Is it competitors just seeing that, is it developers seeing that the competitors are doing very well with you? How are you able to grow so quickly and still keep the product very high quality the way it is? You're not really dropping a ball on any single project. I've never had anybody say, oh, we did this project, and they couldn't give us a time of day, regardless of the size. So you're just able to scale, do more projects, build more connections, and I feel like your designs are improving and they're looking more and more beautiful. Like, how do you do that?
This is such a multifaceted question with a lot of like different facets in the answer. First of all, thank you for the compliment. So let's start with how are we able to like scale and systems. The answer is systems. Maintain a very or develop great systems and be like be obsessed on analyzing your process and constantly improving the process. During our first questions, I mentioned that I learned how to be more human. It's because of my obsessive personality. I'm a 4 a.m. person. I wake up at 4 a.m. Right? And big part of that is I try to analyze every day what is our process, how did we deliver a project, what can we optimize, how do we optimize it, and how to get better. And once this is baked in your company, that allows you to scale without affecting your product. And that goes back to like us starting our firm from scratch and not having any cookbook to follow. So, naturally you analyze, evolve, and whoever doesn't evolve, like it falls behind. So one facet is that, right? Like obsessive over our systems, obsessive over our processes, and obsessive over our quality control. So every RFI we receive, it gets cataloged. So we analyze why we received it, and in the next issuance of drawings or the next project, we try to minimize or eliminate that. That is in our like scheduling time frames. It's across the board. Every 6 months, my team knows that we improve every single one of our systems. They're used to it. I guess it's annoying, but every aspect, every single drawing that you received, I can guarantee that if you check a set of drawings from 6 months ago to today, you'll realize it's different. It might be a little different, but it's different. And there is a lot of things that they have internally changed. So that's one aspect internally, how we are able to maintain quality. Then expanding our circle. I think the main driver for that is the products that we put out, because it's both the competition as well as the word of mouth that allows us to grow and have these conversations regarding new projects. Even in a slow market, we are extremely busy, and I believe it's because people feel safe with us, and they know the deliverables, they know our product, and they know we care. I think that's the main components. If you're doing if we've delivered like the three most successful projects within a neighborhood, I think we are one of the front runners on getting the fourth project, right?
How many
Would you,
projects are you doing right now?
We are about like 50 projects,
58. And how many people do you have working for you?
15.
I can't even get my head around how you do that. Because
It's
if you look at your construction
systems.
set, it's 100 pages that we have, maybe a little more for the townhomes we're doing together. So I would think for larger scale projects, there'll be more. It's just almost unfathomable to how you guys get everything done without dropping the ball. It's truly something else.
It's again, it's systems, right? Once if you look at the production line like a factory, everything works in a certain way, and no matter how you interrupt it or it has bumps in the road, the system is there in place to bring you back. So I'm not saying it's flawless, and by no means I'm saying that we've never missed like a deadline by a day or two. We're dealing with humans. We are all humans, right? People get sick, things happen. Like right, we I don't know, like you lose internet for a week. Nothing we can do about it. But that being said, there is always something to put us back in track and track our progress and track our process and track our projects and maintaining a very strong team. I think I did not speak enough about my team. I happen to be like the face of the company, but I would not be able to do like a single thing with every single one of them. They're all been with us for years. We have really good retention. And it's because I try to always hire people in the same mindset and people that they are willing to learn and grow and evolve and they have the same passion on evolving instead of like, oh, this is a job. We try to take care of our people as well. But one of the main things is, systems, very healthy work environment. We are friends, and the studio aspect of our name is very strong in our process and how we interact. And once you lead by inspiring people and not by fear, then you have a recipe for success because people start caring when they see you care.
so one of the things that you mentioned is the different ways that you've built your company and you are competing against firms that have hundreds of employees, right? And oftentimes you're starting to win now because of your reputation, the success of your projects. What would you say in this highly competitive field that you have is your top two or three things that Input Creative Studios differentiates themselves from any other design studio, whether it's a bigger one, a smaller one, longer established, that this is your edge when it comes to anybody else?
Constant evolution. I think everyone is stagnant, and I believe I outwork and outperform every single one of them. Like that, I'm very confident of this. I don't think there's anyone more obsessed than I am, and I know that cares more than I do. I think like there are wonderful people and amazing films out there, and they're definitely our competition or films that they are bigger than us, and we, obviously we try to break in bigger and bigger markets constantly. But the same way when we started, we landed people like Lenovo and companies like Samsung as our client in as a 2 year like old like firm. I think it's the same environment now. And the difference is we do have the portfolio, we do have the name, we do have the deliverables, and they have become even more obsessed every day and every year.
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned that. And me and Farouk always talked about it. So we were always surprised how you make yourself available as the owner of the company to every single project, including the ones that we did, where even on a busy day, if there was an emergency, if your first meeting is at 7:30 a.m., you would say, okay, I'll get there at 6:45 a.m. You will squeeze the emergency in to make sure that the project moves along. Have you, you mentioned something about work-life balance before. How do you balance that where you have so many projects and you want to make sure everything is done great to the absolute, T of your vision? And you have to make kind of boundaries to, okay, even if it's an emergency, I can't go out there. Or for you at this point in your life, it's like, this is my baby, it's an emergency, I'll still make time for it.
You have like your own business as well, and you do have family and you do have kids, right? Are you available
All the
24/7?
time.
Do you consider yourself a great father?
I hope so. You know, hopefully
I
my
would say that he is. I know it's not good to label yourself a good father, but I think Farhad is definitely a
Or
phenomenal father.
are you striving to be a good father? And what are your metrics? Your metrics are like provide for your family and make sure when you're present to be present, right? And be a great like role model. So based on these metrics, do you think you achieve those? And I think that that is my answer. I try to provide the best for my family and my kids at the highest level. I try to like be a good role model, which means like teach them like work ethics, teach them how to be like good human beings, teach them how to give back. And when I'm present, I'm present. Me being out of the house at like 5 o'clock in the morning makes no difference to them, right? But me being present in the weekends, and the only way I'm able to be present in the weekends is because I do have a successful business that allows me to like devote time to my family when I'm there and do like fun things and travel, go to our weekend home, do whatever. So, and that's why I believe like the the Jeff Bezos quote about being symbiotic relationship than work-life balance is more correct because it's not about balancing two random things that they're not connected. One is connected to the other, and yeah, I think that's my answer.
Yeah, that's very admirable, and honestly, it was very surprising that you're able to devote yourself to almost, I mean, to every single one of your projects the way you do. And it was amazing to be part of the projects with you and seeing all the projects that you put up and seeing your portfolio is just very impressive.
Thank you.
Well, as a creative person, every creative person has a dream of something that would, some project that would take on if money wasn't an issue. Oftentimes, and interior designers, architects, they have a vision, they can't put it to life because they have always constraints on them. And the developer says, "This is my budget." Rarely ever does a designer get an infinite budget to put their vision into life. If budget wasn't an issue and you could do absolutely anything, what project would you love to take on?
I do not think budget was ever an issue. So I
Maybe for the developer who was stressing on the other side of your CM, maybe for for them it was.
correct, but I mean like for me it was never a budget issue that we never executed a project the way we imagined. There are two projects that one is a personal project. I would love to have a really big piece of land in upstate New York and develop like cabins, right? And that's like a personal like passion. And then
Cabins, okay. I was thinking
yeah,
something like 100-story skyscraper, but
but
okay, cabins work.
I'm not there. No, that's the personal part, right? Professionally, I think there are two project typologies that we haven't fully touched yet, but it's closer than it's much closer than it was like a few years ago. One is we would love to do like a skyscraper. We've done like multiple high rises, but we never broke something over like 50 stories. So I would love to undertake that. And the second one is as a dream project, we would love to undertake a resort with all components of a resort, including like the dining and bars and restaurants in some kind of remote island in Greece. I think it would be amazing to combine some business and pleasure to that extent.
Do you do any work in Greece now? Do you have any kind of inquiries coming from there?
We've done a few projects in the past, and I think now it's getting like more and more active. Nothing like in the immediate. And by the way, my best friend in Greece is like a successful developer. We just chose not to work together.
Oh, wow, why? You guys just keep the
Because
friendship away from
we've
business?
been we've been like best friends from like since we're like very young, and I think it's when it comes to that at this stage of life to enter a journey in a business relationship with one hires the other, it's just not. I don't think it's a healthy thing to do.
Wow, that's interesting. I would never, I would think that only makes sense developer designer. It's like the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
We both know there's this tension there that arises on a daily basis, and if you have this amazing friendship, the tension sometimes adds sour grapes to the makes that you don't want them.
Also, there are lines that you don't want to cross, especially with someone that has been your best friend for like, since you were like in elementary school, and you've done things, you've experienced like a lot of embarrassing moments. So to have like serious business conversation as employee-employer, it can get like messy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point about the skyscraper, hopefully that's something we'll do together. And we will put up a skyscraper with Janos designing this and your firm Input Creative. We want to thank you for coming on. I know we've asked you to come on earlier to get this done. Thank you for coming on and sharing your side of the very competitive business, which is New York City development, and the importance of having a designer with the architectural background, with the GC background. Thank you, Janos.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and allowing me and to like talk about myself and stroke my ego a bit. So that's a great opportunity. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.